How do you screen your tenants?
I've got these plastic cheat sheet cards of all my tenant screening questions. So I have them printed on plastic business cards. They're in my wallet, in my car, in my wife's purse. I have them everywhere so I can make sure I come across professional on the phone. I'm organized. I'm asking all the right questions. The ability to throw questions back at the prospective caller puts the ball back in their court and forces them to take action and really, put the effort into inquiring about your property. If
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in for the Canadian Real Estate Channel. I'm Kayla Andrade, co-host and also Ontario Landlords Watch. And tonight I have a special guest for you. And this is someone that we're listening. We're listening to the viewers, and it's not just Ontario-based. We're going Canada-wide. And so tonight we are bringing you MacKenzie Wilson from Alberta Landlord Community. Thank you so much, MacKenzie, for coming onto the channel and giving our viewers exactly what they need to know about investing into Alberta.
Great. Well, thanks, Andrea, for having me on the show. And quite frankly, thanks to Peter and Matt in the background for bringing me onto the YouTube channel. It's a super cool experience, and looking forward to what we can contribute to the group.
That's screening the tenants. We have different rules and regulations that we have to follow. We know that there's so many penalties and problems that could come by getting the wrong tenant in. Now, What is your tips and tricks and the start process? If it's right down to how you advertise your rental unit, the first interaction with the tenants, if it's through Messenger or phone, how do you screen your tenants?
Okay, great. Well, let's do some role playing here. Do you want to be a prospective tenant calling me? I have a beautiful property downtown Calgary. It's great for that young professional, and you've just moved to the city and you're asking questions about my rental property, and I'm happy to take any objections and work through them with you and challenge me on a phone call. We should do that. Do you want to do that? Are we going to just do you want to do
I think we're going to have a rehearsing on that one, because I could be like...
This is impromptu. I just thought of this now. Actually, our shop talk tomorrow is all about role playing and working through these challenging conversations that I know a lot of new landlords, and I was certainly one of them. My heart used to race in my chest when I talked to tenants, and I was like, so when do you want to move? And I'd be quivering at the voice and stuff. But, a little bit of practice and repetition and seeing how people handle the conversation could probably be beneficial, maybe.
Well, okay. So you're putting me to the challenge. I wanted to do some tenant screening. Yeah. So, hi, MacKenzie. I'm calling about your 2-bedroom, 1-bath with 1-car parking. What is the process of me coming to take a look at that rental unit and applying for it?
Great, Kayla. Thank you so much for your interest. Absolutely. I'll tell you what. How about you take a moment, tell me about yourself so I can understand what your needs are and make sure that what I'm offering is the best fit for you. And I'll certainly add in questions along the way to answer any question you have along the way. So start out by telling me about yourself and what you're looking for.
So it's me and my 4 children. I do work in a real estate office, so I just do the paperwork. I do make about $55,000 a year, and I'm looking to move within the next month or two, just because I don't like the way that where I'm living now.
Okay, all right. So you're looking to move in the next month or two. So when would be your ideal move-in date?
I would say for February 1st.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to pause our role-playing conversation, because one thing we did right off the bat was I always bring the question back to the person calling to get them to explain a little bit about themselves. And if you're a little nervous having the conversation, maybe you might want to start just talking about the rental property first to get the flow of the conversation going. But what I like to do is I throw an open-ended question back to the caller, and I let them explain about themselves, and I bite my tongue and try to make it to the point where it's uncomfortably, create those awkward pauses where it's even uncomfortable. And if it's uncomfortable, then you're just starting to do enough of it. And what will happen, human tendency is to fill in the silence. And one thing I noticed you told me there is you told me your salary. I don't know if you can ask that or not. It's one of the areas I don't really dive into, but where I do qualify it for the conversation.
Trying to get a rental unit. I got to give you my salary right off the bat.
Yeah. So you mentioned you've got 4 kids. That's cool. So then I know there's first 4 kids under the age of 18. I can't legally ask those ages, but I found at times people will be like, I have a 2-year-old, I might have a 5-year-old. So they typically divulge more information than you can allow to ask for, which is for sure helps paint a picture of when you're
Yeah.
talking to someone on the phone.
As soon
Okay,
as you
awesome.
say, tell me about yourself.
Yeah, tell me about yourself and what do you need? Okay, so awesome, Kayla. Thank you so much. All right, so you're looking for a moving day of February 1st. What type of term of lease are you looking for? Is it 6 months, 1 year? What do
I'm
you
looking
need?
for long term.
Okay, long term. So 1 year plus.
Yes.
Okay, so we confirm it's 1 year plus. Okay, and then you already mentioned, so just confirm how many people will be living in the rental property?
There's going to be 5 of us.
5 of us. Okay, so again, you said me and 4 kids, and this is super important.
Because you have a 2-bedroom.
Because you have a 2 bedroom, and you know what? There's cultural differences out there where, like, depending where people move in from the country, especially I know in Ontario, because when people come to Canada, they come on the west coast or the east coast. It's either they move into Ontario somewhere, or they move into Vancouver on the west coast. And I know, and you know that 5 people living in a 2 bedroom might not cut it because that's pretty tight, but that could be the cultural norm somewhere else. So it seems silly to ask some of these questions, but it's super important because, again, you don't know what someone's expectation is getting into the call. So awesome, you've confirmed that. My next question is, do you smoke or vape?
I smoke outside.
You smoke, okay. And do you vape as well?
No.
Okay, and that's the important thing. I got burnt on that because someone says, well, if you ask specifically, do you just smoke? Some people are like, oh, well, that's not really means vaping, so I'm just going to say no. They do vape, and some people choose to do that inside. So, I mean, there's a little bit devil in the details in the wording of the questions. That's why it's worded that way. Here's a great question. Have you given notice to your current landlord?
Yes, I did.
Perfect. Usually an indicator of how they treat current landlords is probably an indicator of how they're going to treat future landlords. So it's good to see that you follow proper due diligence there. By the way, what I'm doing right now too is I've got these plastic cheat sheet cards of all my tenant screening questions, because when I first got into business, I only had a couple of units, and I would do this conversation once or a handful of times, once every vacancy, which was at the beginning once a year. And I would always get frazzled, and I always forget, and I would have a little bit of disruption to my flow, and I'd forget to ask questions. So I just said, enough's enough. So I have them printed on plastic business cards. They're in my wallet, in my car, in my wife's purse. I have them everywhere, so I can make sure I come across professional on the phone. I'm organized. I'm asking all the right questions, and I'm not really kind of stuttering along the call. So there's a good
Nice.
flow of the conversation. Yeah, and then while we're talking about the questions, I also have them copied and pasted on my phone under Google Notes or whatever your favorite note-taking application is. So then if I get incoming inquiries that aren't phone calls, so perhaps a text message, an email, whatever communication platform they're using, I can copy and paste and ask all the same questions within about 5 seconds. So I have the ability to respond very quickly, which is a good competitive advantage when it looks professional, when you can answer quickly and you have all your questions laid out. It shows you're organized, you're professional, and it also gets rid of the tire kickers. So I have a lot of self-eliminating inquiries where people are just like, oh, I'm going to kick the tires, see if it's available, or if they're on like Facebook Marketplace, to say they just click that bubble, are you available? They don't even type a question.
I
And
hate when they do that.
right, could be pretty annoying. So the ability to throw questions back at the prospective caller puts the ball back in their court and forces them to take action and really, put the effort into inquiring about your property. If they're just tire kickers who are not going to answer, perfect. Carry on, no harm foul, and all that. And sometimes you'll get the people that appear to be tire kickers, and they actually turn out to be qualified tenants that are worth taking the viewing. But you may eliminate them right off the bat if you don't take the time to answer to them because they annoy you with some silly questions. So.
And do you explain to them that you need to do a credit check on them as well on that initial call or the message?
I'm halfway through my question. Should we get back to our role playing?
Oh yeah, back to the role play.
So Kayla, that's fantastic. Thanks. It's always good to hear that you're giving notice to your current landlord. Where are you currently living right now? What's your current address?
I'm at 225 Water Lane.
Cool. And how long have you been at this address for?
I've been here about 1.5 years now.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I've changed this question. I used to kind of like stick handle and be like PR around not asking what the person's job is, but it's such a casual conversation. I just say, what's your current occupation? What do you do for a job or a career? So I'll let you.
In real estate, doing
Real estate,
paperwork.
running office and admin stuff. Okay, no problem. Perfect. Before I used to work, if someone's not comfortable asking that, you can go with my older question here, which was, Are you currently working full-time? If not, what other types of income do you have? And then I lead into the next question with this once they kind of ask that. So let's just say, you're making $1,000 or not 1,000, 2,000 or $3,000. Then I go, by the way, the damage deposit on first month's rent is X amount. So let's say in this case it's $1,500. Both are due before getting the keys or possession. Will that be a problem, Kayla?
No.
Okay, perfect. And just the way people answer that question, if they hesitate, they go, they hum and haw. Or I see a question quite common in our group where people say, the tenant can't get the damage deposit plus first month's rent at the same time. They're asking to do a payment plan or split it over 3 payments. To me, that's a red flag. I think you want, well, in my ideal tenant, I look for someone that has that, at least that kind of cash flow. If they can't scrap together that kind of money to make the initial move in, I think that's an indicator down the road that you're going to have more problems collecting rent when it comes due. So if they can't do that in one single payment, that's an opportunity or a red flag to move on. All right. This is so much fun. Kayla, you sound like a great tenant so far.
Yeah, you're going to let me just come in with, first and last and not even do a credit check on me?
We don't do first and last. That's an Ontario thing.
Oh,
so happy
yeah.
to talk
You
about
guys
that.
got the deposit. Don't get me jealous again.
Yeah. So then the last part, a little bit of market research. We should always be trying to market in a few different places so you know what's working, because the whole marketplace is always changing, right? Like call it 3 or 4 years ago, there wasn't anything called TikTok. Before that, there wasn't Snapchat. There's always going to be a new tool of flavor. There might be opportunities depending on what type of product you're offering and what your ideal tenant profile is. Some platforms may be better to advertise than others. And we can get into how to determine that as well. But so then I always go, now, how did you hear about us? Did you hear about from Facebook? And in Alberta, we got Rent Faster in some of the cities, Rent Board, Kijiji. Where did you hear
I heard from Rent Faster.
Okay, fantastic. Good choice. Okay, awesome. So this is the last part of my pre-screen process. It's a bit of a behavioral test as well. I go, okay, great, thanks, Kayla. I might go back and forth on some questions and details about the rental. Once we get all that handled over, we'll pick a date and time for the viewing. And then, and I'll go, all right, Kayla, that's great. Thanks for confirming the date and time. We'll see you, say, tomorrow at 5 p.m. Now, just one thing, I understand we all live busy lives, and things can come up and things can change. And to confirm the appointment, I do need a text 2 hours prior to the viewing to confirm it. If I don't get that text, I do consider the appointment canceled and I don't show up. Are you okay to text to confirm 2 hours before?
Yes, I am.
Great. And at that time, I'll also give you the address to the rental property. So what I've just done now is I've given you a task to follow. It's a very simple task, but are you organized enough to remember to put down your calendar somewhere to send a text to confirm an appointment? If I don't get that confirmation, I don't go out to the rental property. Now, depending on where people live in their location and relative to the location of their rental properties, for me in Calgary, going across the city is about a half an hour drive to one of my properties. So I have no desire, especially if it's during rush hour or just after rush hour, or if I've got a hockey game, go Flames go, to watch, or I'm hanging out with my 2 boys. I value my time and I'm very protective of it. So I install this process to, one, protect my time, avoid going to no-shows, but more importantly, making sure the tenants, well, just as important, I should say, ensuring the tenants can follow a simple process. And if they can follow this behavioral test and be organized, it's just another indicator that they would be a good tenant.
Now we'll lead into the next segment that we're going to be talking about, is the concept of, we did all the checks. They sound pretty good over the phone. They came and looked at the place. They showed you the proof of their credit check or their work references and whatnot. But what if we messed up somehow? Or what if it was just a good tenant gone bad? Now we want to be able to talk about, eventually, the Residential and Tenancy Act in Alberta, and get our concept into understanding, is it in favor of the landlord, the tenant, or is it pretty fair and balanced for both if you have to go through the Residential and Tenancy Act?
Okay, so great questions. We did skip a very important part called due diligence. We can certainly make that another video, so hang tight for that. I'll wait for Kayla to shoot that one out. But yeah, so you want to talk about our legislation. Ours is the RTA, the Residential Tenancy Act here in Alberta. I would say out of all the provinces in Canada, we are probably the most pragmatic and balanced between tenants and landlords. We have the ability to evict due to non-payment, due to damages. We can, if it's a fixed tenancy, meaning it's not month to month, but let's say it's a 6-month or a 1-year lease in the term, and then we come to the end of that term and we feel it's not a good fit, we don't renew, that tenant will need to choose to move on and go into another rental property. So I know things in Ontario, you guys can't do that, right? It's you're almost married at, plus you have rent controls and other policies are
It's like your
in
children.
place. Yeah, it's like
We
a
take them on
permanent
like
relationship.
children.
They become a children. Hey, yeah, that's crazy. Like that does not happen here. So, where do you want to take this conversation? What's interesting?
I know the RTA is a pretty big thing. So let's get into when you were dealing with the Residential and Tenancy Act, and do you have like a standard lease? So now that you've accepted the tenant, is there a standard lease that you're supposed to fill out, or can you create your own? And what would you suggest would be your top 3 clauses that you would want to include within your lease agreement?
Good questions. So to answer your first question, do we use a standard lease? It's both. So technically, no, we can put anything in our lease as long as it doesn't contradict the RTA, the Residential Tenancy Act. And we have to put some verbiage in our leases. So that's the part that we have to comply to is, and don't quote me on the exact wording. It's if there's a contradiction, or what was the right word for it, if there is a part of the lease that contradicts the RTA, the RTA shall prevail, or the act shall prevail, meaning that if there's something in my lease that goes against the legislation, the RTA is correct and it will void that part of the lease. So yes, we can put what we want in the leases, but of course it can't be contradicting against the RTA. But we're allowed to put, like I'm trying to give you, like, what would be something that I would specifically put in?
Maybe something about pets, not allowed to have pets.
Carpet clean. Like, you know what? Professional carpet cleaning is a requirement at the exit of your lease. By the end of your lease, you have to show me an invoice from a professional carpet cleaner that you've cleaned the property. So
Wow.
That's one.
And what if they don't?
Then you charge them. It comes off the damage deposit. But that's a contractual agreement of the lease.
And your damage deposit is how much?
A damage deposit here in Alberta is equal up to 1 month's rent.
And
you cannot exceed that.
And if you do, then the tenant can bring you to your dispute resolution board process.
Of course.
In order to
go for it.
Okay, no, I was trying to remember that it's RTDRS is how we have it, the Landlord and Tenant Board in Ontario, but obviously you guys have it a little bit different of how you deal with different type of disputes. So I was more trying not to lead into it quite yet, but obviously when you get into the RTA, knowing what you can include and know when things do go wrong, you got to know that next step now and where you have to deal with a dispute that comes about having a bad tenant. But I think that's going to be another segment in itself. So we're really going to get ourselves into, now that you got yourself into the tenant screening, trying to talk to them over the phone, opening them up, asking them type of questions that, that open-ended question, tell me about yourself, and knowing the type of unit you have and the type of tenant that you're looking for and that type of behavior that you're looking for, to know that they can follow simple instructions as that you're giving them to even come into the unit. And when you do a credit check on them, is there a certain type of score that you're looking for, or is it what's on their credit that would be attached to or interested in before you accept them as a tenant?
Yeah, so great questions. Well, let's start back. Again, we're saying so many good points. Going back to talking about, can a tenant take me to the RTDRS? Of course. Both the landlords and the tenants have the use of this service, and it's RTDRS. It's Residential Tenancy Dispute Resolution Service. I Google it because I tend to combine my acronyms and make it a new word. So I want to make sure I'm giving you guys facts here and not some hearsay. So let's talk about credit checks and credit scores. I'm a big believer of it. Do you need to use it all the time? I think the experienced landlords and the investors watching the channel will probably say no. for example, let's take my business partner, Chris. He's a retired police officer. He's a former RCMP officer. He lives in a small town here in Alberta, a town of like 2,000 to 5,000 people. And he's very well connected in the community. He knows he can go and message very quickly the landlords in and around. He'll know if someone's rented this person or not before. So he doesn't actually use credit checks. So and I totally respect that, because he's got other tools and his own personal experience and background. He's a very inquisitive or curious person. He's a police officer. He's done that kind of investigation his entire life. So he's very good at that part of the business. So he's comfortable not doing the credit checks. Me on the other side, I am I would be a background in business and IT. I'm a people pleaser. I love to maintain and build relationships. So confrontation's always been a bit of a challenge for me. It's something I've worked on in my recent years, but especially when I first got on a landlord, and I wanted to do nothing with conflict, any of that. So all of my efforts up front were as much as I could do. And again, being and here's a bit of a prediction, just kind of where I've seen the industry go only in the last 5 years. So you go back 5-6 years ago, there wasn't very many services to do credit checks or background checks or all of that stuff. But we're a very data centric society now. Everything can be done online. We want convenience. We want instant information, and there's only more and more information becoming more and more available. So it gives you the opportunity to paint a really accurate picture. So part of my screening theory or my methodology that I take to screen tenants is it's similar to big data analytics. I grab as many different data points as I can, some that are related to renting the property and some that are not, just to ensure that I'm getting a truthful and accurate picture of the tenant that's applying for my property, and then I'm validating that all the information they provide to me is in fact accurate and not made up or even slightly altered to look a little bit nicer than the next tenant. So that's kind of the process as a whole. So yeah, I certainly use I use Neighborly, I use Single Key. I know that you're very well familiar with Kayla Front Lobby, that was just recently named from Landlord Credit Bureau. Also a very powerful tool. It's been part of my due diligence up front, and it's a really great filtering tool. So I'm happy to discuss that too. But I think an important thing here is, how do you even accept a credit score? Like, what do you look for a credit score when you go and do it, Andrea?
And that's the thing. You have your concept of being able to pull a credit check. It's on your application form, having that clause to give their tenants are giving you that permission in order to do a credit check. First of all, that's number one, important for everyone to include that on their rental application. Then when you look at the type of score, that already helps you out with, good, bad, fair, great. So you got the A pluses and you got always down to the D. It's not always going to be that, the Ds are actually the most horrible. There could be circumstances of why they became in a hardship situation and why their credit was affected that way. It could have been a divorce. So you really want to get down into the nitty gritty of expanding into doing your credit checks through Front Lobby, because you're getting your credit check, also the tenancy record. So if there's a tenancy record of a landlord reporting the tenant's monthly payment history, now you're getting down into, okay, let me see that you can at least pay your rent on time. So if the credit's not the greatest, at least you can now show backing by having your rents payments being reported by your landlord in order to have the validation. So it really does go towards helping good tenants grow that credit or improve their credit, and it does give that landlord some backing, knowing that they have that tool in their pocket. And I think a lot of landlords, no matter where you are in Canada, you really need to have as many tools in your pocket through the screening technique. And if you know a bunch of people in the community, it's great. It's nice that, when you're small and it's a small little city or a small community, you get to know who's who. But there's so many steps in everyone's process that you really want to make sure that it stays a business structure and that you don't skip a beat. Because in Ontario, for sure, it's obviously could be catastrophic. Alberta, it seems like the laws are on your side, and we're going to get into that shortly. But it is going to be into that concept that we do have to know that we're doing everything that we can to make sure that we're screening the right type of tenant and getting them in there. But you want to look at how much debt do they have? Do they have credit cards that are, this is your credit limit and they're almost maxed out of there. Here's an amount that's owing. You want to know if there's anything in collections. You want to know how are they with, telling you the truth about their employment. You can get a letter that's completely photoshopped by tenants now these days, explaining a pay stub.
And pay stubs.
Yeah. So you want to make sure that your credit check is able to pull that information for you and making sure that you're doing everything that you can to be successful, because buying the property at X amount of dollars and knowing what you can get for rent is great. But as soon as you get that wrong tenant in there, that's when it's going to really take you for a spin, and it could put a very nasty taste in your mouth where you're not even going to go get the next rental. So our goal is through, all, of course, my community and of course yours, is really changing the way that our support is given to all landlords so that they can be fully equipped with the different tools and benefits to make them good landlords, in order to bring them over into the to benefit the tenants and to keep more landlords in that supply. We're going to have MacKenzie on again, because I know I'm not done with him yet. You can tell by his answers that he has so much to say to us, and I know I really want to get into how to deal with the tenant disputes. That is we're going to do whatever we can to do the tenant screening, but again, we have good tenants that go bad, and I know that MacKenzie is going to have a breakdown of how a dispute is handled within Alberta and how long it would actually take to evict a tenant. So make sure you tune in for the next video. Until then, MacKenzie, how can someone find you, to find your community, to be a part of it, and to continue to help grow Alberta Landlord Community? Because I think what you guys are doing is fantastic and the support is phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely, Kayla. Thanks for the time on the show. Really appreciate it. Yeah, let's get into it. So if you guys want to find where we exist, we kind of exist in 3 different places. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, and we have our own private social community as well. Our YouTube channel is under our old banner name, findgreattenants.com, tenants with an S. If you click there, that will redirect you right to our YouTube channel, because our YouTube channel is very hard to remember. It's just a bunch of numbers. If you go to Alberta Landlord Community.ca, that's our private website. We've got our discounts. We have our own private conversation. It's kind of a more of a deeper dive, or a leveraging point from going from Facebook. As much as we all love Facebook, it's a platform that we don't have full control over. So we also have this other community called Alberta Landlord Community.ca, and it's a super powerful tool. So check that out. And then on Facebook, if you guys want to look up our Facebook group, you go to search groups and do Alberta Landlord Community. You'll see my beautiful mug up with Chris Noble on the front of the page, and apply on the group. You do note, though, because we are very diligent in who we let in, all the questions do need to be answered, and don't be surprised if a admin or a moderator reaches out to you to clarify further, because again, we probably only let about, of all the people that apply in the to get into our group, we let in about 50%, because most of the time they aren't landlords, and so we're very diligent around that to keep that conversation productive and non-toxic.
So if you guys are watching and you're a landlord, what about a property managers? Our property managers are allowed in too, right?
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Anyone that manages a rental property in Alberta can be let in. We do both residential and commercial. We don't have a lot of commercial folks on them, but there are some that do have those conversations as well. But yeah, okay. Residential rentals in Alberta, we're the place to be.
So we'll make sure we'll put the links where you can find MacKenzie and Chris inside of the Alberta Landlord Community. If you're looking to find me, Kayla Andrade on Facebook, as well as Ontario Landlords Watch members group, as well as our public page, which is Ontario Landlords Watch. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and even LinkedIn. Want to make sure that we're covering as many platforms to make sure that we're available to help our landlords in Ontario to navigate through the Residential and Tenancy Act and Landlord and Tenant Board, and to really work together as a fair and balanced housing system for good landlords and good tenants. And we're also going to put the link for Landlord Credit Bureau /rent lobby, so that you're able to take advantage and start rent reporting for your good tenants, as well as knowing that there is accountability for your tenants. If they don't pay rent, you're also able to report that and also do the collect. So we'll put that into the comments below. Until then, subscribe, share the video, and just know that the Canadian Real Estate Channel is here to make sure that we are providing you with as much content as we possibly can to help you thrive as a Canadian real estate investor, no matter where you are in Canada. We want to thank you so much for tuning in, and stay tuned to our next video.
Thanks for having us.